Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. For those of you tuning in for the first time, this is the show designed to change your health and change your life for the future. My whole purpose for doing this show is to try to help as many people as I possibly can live a healthier life using totally natural, drug-free solutions to some of today's most complicated, difficult health problems. So thank you for tuning in. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Bryant Wellness Institutes. We're Louisiana's most advanced functional medicine institute, and that means that we use the latest research and technologies available to treat today's most complicated health problems in a totally natural way. So it's pretty amazing things we're doing in the Acadiana area. I'm here with my co-host, Brandon. Come up, Brandon. How are you this morning?
Doing well, doctor. What's going on?
Man, I really appreciate you letting me go on your show this week. I enjoyed it so much. We had callers, and we talked about this whole cholesterol myth. It was fun.
Oh, we had a blast, and we were excited you were able to be in studio this time. I mean, we always are happy to have you on the phone, but getting you in studio really allowed for even more people to call in and interact with us as well. So we had an absolute blast having you. Thank you for coming by.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to do some more of that.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you that missed it, Brandon has a show on weekdays called Offsides with Brandon and Shannon. If you haven't caught his show before, you need to tune in. It's a great show. You know, sometimes they get into some, let me just say, controversial things. That's great radio, man. Y'all make some great radio.
We try, man. We try. Well, we want to talk about the things that don't necessarily get the attention that they deserve.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like what we did earlier this week, bringing you on and talking about some of the same topics that we're talking about today. These are things that people are interested in, but they don't necessarily get the airtime that they always deserve. And that's what we try to do on our show. And that's how I love being a part of your show on Saturday mornings.
I've listened to KPEL for, years. My radio stays on KPEL. And even before I had a show on KPEL. And y'all, the subjects you guys go over don't really get addressed anywhere else, on any of the other shows. Mm-hmm. Now, today I wanted to continue with this cholesterol, this whole cholesterol thing we've been talking about. And let me just start by saying that what you may think about cholesterol and what it does, it just doesn't pan out. There's so many misconceptions out there about cholesterol and heart disease, and there's people walking around thinking they're safe. And Brandon, this is my thing that gets me the most. This is what gets under my skin the most. Is there's people out there walking around feeling like their cholesterol is lowered with these statin drugs, so they're safe. They're not going to have a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And there's just not very much correlation there at all, if any. And listen, let me start off by saying I'm not a cardiologist, but I'm going to be quoting a bunch of them today. And this is not just me saying that. Brandon, I did one search on Amazon for cholesterol books. And I've got 4 pages of this. The Cholesterol Myth, Why Lowering Cholesterol Won't Prevent Heart Disease by Dr. Stephen Sinatra. The Cholesterol Myth, Exposing the Fallacy of Saturated Fat and Cholesterol Cause Heart Disease by Uffe Rowski. And then The Cholesterol Myth by MacArthur. And then The Cholesterol Myth, What We Know That Isn't So by David Rowland. The Cholesterol Myth, The Real Truth About Cholesterol They Don't Want You to Know. The Truth About Statins, Risk and Alternatives to Cholesterol-Lowering Drugs. The Great Cholesterol Con. I could go on and on. I've got 5 pages of these books on this cholesterol. So this is not just me saying this or, 1 or 2 doctors saying this. Guys, this is a movement. This is something that if you haven't heard about this yet, the ideas out there about that total cholesterol causes heart disease and eating saturated fat will increase your cholesterol and that causes you to have heart attacks. That's outdated now. It's time for us to move on to some better science. And there is a lot of better science out there, and there's study after study after study that shows this. Dr. Sinatra calls it cholesterol mania. We've so vilified cholesterol over the last 40 years that it's gotten completely insane. Well, actually, the truth, Brandon, is it's not insanity. It's big business is really what it is. One Harvard researcher called it, not my words, one Harvard researcher called it the greatest scam ever perpetrated on mankind. And, back in the 90s, we all thought this was the case. We thought cholesterol was the enemy and you should eat a low-fat diet. I can remember, Brandon, when a healthy lunch was a baked potato with no butter and a salad with low-fat dressing.
It sounds about as boring as possible.
Yeah.
Oh, and just add some tofu in there or something.
But everybody was eating that, thinking that was their healthy lunch. And it was so off. And heart disease did not go down. Obesity did not go down. And so this is why, saturated fat is actually good for your body. It reduces inflammation. And inflammation is the key here, not cholesterol. Now, before I get into this more today, though, I do want to say there are 2 cholesterol markers that can be bad for you in certain instances. But unfortunately, no one does the testing for those 2 particles except for us and maybe a few others. There's a couple of things that you need to know about these individual particle types of cholesterol that could be dangerous in certain circumstances. But again, none of that's even looked at unless we do it. So it's time for a totally new approach to keep you from having heart disease and a heart attack. Because isn't that the real goal here? Aren't the reason you're worried about your cholesterol and isn't the reason that you don't want to eat something that's high in fat because you're afraid that it's going to give you a heart attack? And so that's the underlying goal. We need to be asking, not what do I need to do to lower my cholesterol, but let's look at the research and what do we need to do to lower heart attacks? And it's not the same thing. And so this new science, this new research is critically important that you know about. And I'm going to be talking about this at my workshop. I'm giving a workshop on this, and I'm going to be talking about each one of these studies and show you, what you actually need to do to lower your chance of having a heart attack, which is the underlying goal. And I'm going to talk more about my workshop in a little bit, and I'm going to tell you how to call and get registered for that. It's going to be Monday night, but people have been led to believe that cholesterol is a terrible thing in their body. And it's a myth that all LDL cholesterol is bad for you. When Dr. Sinatra first started looking at this and kind of rethinking this whole cholesterol theory, and he talks about this in his book, he would do an angiogram on someone with a cholesterol of, say, 280 or higher, and he would expect to find terrible heart disease, and he wouldn't. Or the reverse, he would do an angiogram on somebody with a cholesterol of 150 and expect their heart to be perfect, and they would have severe heart disease. And he just wasn't finding the correlation that he had been led to believe. So he kind of started searching for why that is, looking for the underlying reason. What's the truth on this? And the truth is patients with an increased total cholesterol can actually live longer than those with lower total cholesterol. In fact, just in Parkinson's disease by itself, for every 40 points increase in LDL cholesterol, they have a 15% chance less of dying. And then there's this whole thing about eating saturated fat will cause heart disease. Eating saturated fat does increase your cholesterol a little bit, but that doesn't cause heart disease. And that's where the leap was made that it doesn't belong. That's where we said increasing saturated fat will increase your cholesterol a little bit, and that increased cholesterol that's increased a little bit will now cause heart disease. It's not even a good predictor of it. And that's where they linked it, where it shouldn't have been linked. And now it's $100 billion business. High saturated fats like avocados and nuts and eggs and grass-fed beef and coconut oil does not cause heart attacks. It prevents them because they're anti-inflammatory foods. And inflammation is the killer here, not cholesterol. The 2 particles I talked about that could be dangerous earlier, they can't even affect you unless you have inflammation in your arterial walls. Then they stick to your walls. But not if it's not inflamed. And most cholesterol is made in your liver anyway, not from what you eat. Trans fats are the killers. Sugar is the killer because those are very inflammatory foods. But these studies on cholesterol were cherry-picked to prove something that just is not there. This 7 country studies by Ansel Keys where he cherry-picked only the 7 countries that showed that those countries that ate higher saturated fat and cholesterol had more heart problems. But when you looked at all the countries, there was actually, I think, 22 or 23 countries in the study. It was all over the place. There was no correlation between high-fat diets and dying from heart disease. On the island of Crete, they have high-fat diets, and their cholesterol is higher than normal, and they live very long lives. And he took that out because it didn't match his theory. So a lot of this is just statistical gymnastics. It's smoke and mirrors. And so they put everyone on these statin drugs to lower their cholesterol. And these things come with significant and serious side effects that have been underreported. And so there has to be a better solution. We have to have cholesterol in our bodies. It's good for us. It's a life-sustaining molecule. Cholesterol, if you have cholesterol, that's what turns sunlight to activate vitamin D, which helps regulate your blood pressure. Cholesterol is used in the production of sex hormones like adrenal hormone and testosterone and progesterone. Cholesterol lubricates the skin and it creates neurotransmitters. It helps create the neurotransmitters in our brain and protect our brain and nervous system. That's why we see everyone that their cholesterol gets low. We see an increase in dementia and Alzheimer's rates. Those rates go up, and neurological diseases. Guys, we've had a 600% increase in neurological diseases since we've started lowering everyone's cholesterol artificially. And cholesterol is protective to the gut because it's used in making bile salts, and it prevents GI infections and lung infections. You know, we're seeing every week I see lung and digestive system infections that I didn't used to see. And so there's a lot of data out there that shows the higher your cholesterol to a certain point, the longer that you live. And again, those two exceptions are those two cholesterol particles that I'll get into in a little bit. There are two cholesterol particles that you don't want in your body. They're called lipoprotein A or L-A and apoprotein B. And I'll talk more about those later. But if you don't have inflammation, they don't even hurt you either. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the show, and I'll get really deep into this at my workshop Monday night where I can sit down and show you the graphs, and I've got pictures. You know, graphs and pictures don't work very well over the radio, so we'll go through that Monday night. Now, the workshop is called The Truth About High Cholesterol, High Blood Pressure, and Heart Disease. It's going to be Monday night at 6:30 p.m. at the Hampton Inn Conference Center in Broussard. I want to encourage all of you out there that are taking these statin drugs to please come. There are some critical things you need to know to prevent damage. For example, taking coenzyme Q10. Statins dramatically reduce coenzyme Q10 in your body. Coenzyme Q10 is the most vital nutrient for your heart. And so if you're taking statin drugs and your doctor didn't give you coenzyme Q10, that is not a good thing, because if you don't have coenzyme Q10 in your heart, you can get in real trouble real quickly. And, you know, that's where the ambulance rides and all that come in. So it's very important that we look at this. Now, don't go out there and start taking anything just on your own, just because I said it on the radio. But if you're not on coenzyme Q10 and you're on statin drugs, that's not a good thing. And so statin drugs dramatically lower coenzyme Q10 in the body. So if you want to come to the workshop, we're going to explain all of the details of how this works and how to get to the underlying goal here, which is preventing heart attacks, right? And so we're going to get into the whole reason why all of this came about, and we'll talk about the history of it. And I'm going to show you simple things you can do at home to prevent heart disease. If you want to register, the number is 837-7174. That's 837-7174. Or simply text the word truth to 77453. TRUTH, truth to 77453, and your number will pop right up on my computer. We'll call you Monday morning. We'll get you registered. The workshop's going to be Monday night, so be by your phone. Monday morning, we'll give you a call. And I'm pretty sure that we have some seats left. This one's going to fill up quickly, so call right now if you're interested. It's 837-7174. And if you can't make Monday night, Dr. Fontenot is going to be giving the same workshop Tuesday night in New Iberia, and their number is 367-2567. We're going to continue right after this short break with some amazing information about protecting your heart. So don't go away. Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Thank you for joining us today. We are in a deep discussion about the truth on cholesterol and heart disease. And having high cholesterol and having heart disease is not the same thing. It's not even a good predictor of it. We've so vilified cholesterol that Lipitor is now the number one selling drug on planet Earth. It's a $100 billion industry. And we've gotten so insane that doctors are even talking about putting statins in the water supply. They're writing prescriptions for statin drugs for children. Guys, we've got to stop this insanity with the overuse of medication in this country. America now takes 50% of all of the pharmaceutical drugs on planet Earth. Yet we're just a little over 3% of the world's population. We spend more money on healthcare than most of the world combined, yet China and Cambodia have a longer life expectancy than we do. Now, some places in Cambodia, they might be miles from any healthcare office. They have dirt floors and live in villages with no clean water, and they outlive us. So if the answer to achieving great health was what we're doing, wouldn't we be the oldest country in the world? And it's just not happening. I mean, all of these rates have gone up. You know, obesity rates have gone up. Heart disease, neurological diseases, autoimmune diseases, antibiotic resistant bacteria. All of these things are going up and getting stronger. And it's time that we take a totally new approach for this. And, you know, the reason that the reason that I was put on this planet is to try to find a better way. I've been on a 20-year quest to deal with these complicated health problems without drugs or surgery. And guys, there's some stuff that just doesn't make sense out there. And, you know, think about it. If cholesterol is not the villain, then what is? Because like I said, if the goal is to prevent heart attacks, what do we have to do in order to do that? And keep in mind, cholesterol is not the villain except for those two particles that no one's checking for. We'll get into in a little bit. And we test almost every patient to see if they have these two particles because no one else is testing for them. We have a test to see. So the two particles are lipoprotein A and apoprotein B. And these two particles are the small, dense, sticky ones. And they're the ones that under certain circumstances can stick to your arterial walls. But we're not even testing those. And one cardiologist was asked why, and he said because insurance doesn't cover it. But they're the two most important things that you want to know whenever someone is at risk of a heart attack or not. So cholesterol is not the main villain. Sugar is the main villain. Sugar is the number one destructive thing for our hearts. And I don't just mean the sugar that you put in your coffee. I don't mean like the powdered sugar. I'm talking about foods that turn into sugar. The high glycemic index foods, you know, the crackers and breads and packaged foods with this high glycemic index. Those foods turn into sugar before they ever hit your system. Sugar elicits an insulin response. And insulin is the most endothelial, unfriendly hormone in your body. What does that mean? In the lining of our blood vessels, there's a certain type of cells that line our blood vessels. And when insulin gets into the lining of those endothelial cells, it creates oxidation. Now, what's that? Oxidation damages the lining of our blood vessels and creates free radicals and inflammation. And we feel that it's the inflammation in the lining of the blood vessel that causes these two small sticky particles to attach there. And there's tons of research to say that we're right on with that. We think the body is actually taking these two particles, kind of like spackling a wall, as a protective lining to protect from that inflammation in the lining of the blood vessel. And like I said, there's tons of research to back that up. So we need to deal with the inflammation, we need to deal with the insulin, and we need to deal with these two particles. And none of that's being done. Now, the other thing that happens when you have a lot of sugar in your bloodstream is it combines with proteins and a process called glycation. Glycation is the number one thing that causes accelerated aging. So the less glycation we can make happen in your body, not only the healthier your heart will be, but the less the slower you're going to age as well. And it's really important to create a diet for you that's high in healthy fats, healthy proteins, and low glycemic carbohydrates. And we talk a lot more about this at the workshop. And we've been doing the exact opposite of that, though. You know, we've been eating the opposite of what I just said. Now, when we come to trans fats are absolute killers. And you should avoid trans fats at all costs. And if you look at a label and it has trans fats on it, do not eat that. And now most labels are tricky and they hide that it has trans fats in it. You know, they'll say that it doesn't have them, but then you see something like hydrogenated soybean oil or hydrogenated cottonseed oil. If you see that, it has trans fats in it, and those are killers. And unfortunately, that's a big part of the American diet. So if you see cottonseed oil, canola oil, safflower, corn oil, partially hydrogenated anything, it's probably the very unhealthy type of trans fat in it. Margarines are another example. You know, I'm always railing on margarines on the show. Margarine is pretty much trans fat, and it's super inflammatory, and it's very heart clogging. Use organic grass-fed butter instead. It's so much healthier for you. And yes, it's saturated fat. I have it with my eggs or my or maybe another meal. And so then, guys, there's the emotional stress. People under stress are 4 to 5 times more likely to have a heart attack. I have a whole section in my workshop on stress and how to reduce it. Well, how to reduce the body's response to it, because you can't reduce stress in your life, right? Life's stressful. Now, stress affects the heart and the body's hormonal system. So what happens with this, guys? Stress puts our body in this fight or flight response. Now, if you back up to the hunter-gatherer days, that was very short term. It was fight or flight. And so you were either being chased by a predator or some other clan was attacking us. So it was over, and then we would go back to picking berries and roots and being calm. The body developed this defense mechanism called fight or flight. Now, when we go into fight or flight, it's a reflex. You can't avoid it. It just happens. Whether someone's breaking into your house or you're sitting in traffic late for an appointment, it's exactly the same physiological response. The degree, of course, is different, but the response in your body is exactly the same. Now, when you go into fight or flight response, here's the first thing that happens. Your blood pressure goes up because I'm going to have to run or I'm going to have to fight for my life, and I need a lot of blood pressure. So my body raises my blood pressure. Now, the second thing that happens, so that's why we have all these blood pressure problems. Now, the second thing that happens is that my body diverts the blood from my digestive system to my arms and legs, because I'm going to need to fight with my arms or run with my legs, and I don't need to digest my food because I'm in an emergency. So all the blood goes in my arms and legs, and my digestive system shuts down. The third thing that happens is my sleep hormones are shut down. Now think about this. If you're laying there in your bed tonight about to go to sleep and you hear your front door glass break open, and so you think somebody's breaking into your house, so you get your pistol and you go downstairs, and it wasn't the front door. The cat just knocked a vase off the table and it broke on the floor, and that's what the sound was. Are you going to go back to sleep right away? No, you're going to be shaking and trembling, and your blood pressure is going to be up. Your stomach might be queasy. You're not going to go back to sleep right away. That's stress. But it's not just then. It's happening to us all the time, just not quite as severe as that. So stress affects our sleep, and sleep is critical to a healthy heart and a healthy body. And the last thing, and one of the worst things your body produces under stress, is it produces a stress hormone called cortisol. Now, cortisol is great if I'm in a fight because it has an anti-inflammatory effect to it. So if I get injured, I already have cortisol in my body to help that. The problem with cortisol, if it's produced day after day after day, it becomes a weight-storing hormone, and it adds stress to our hearts, and it makes it impossible to lose weight. So we've got high blood pressure, digestive problems, sleep problems, and weight problems, all from stress. So if that describes any of you out there, now you understand why you're doing that, why your body is the way it is. Now, here's the problem. We don't have someone breaking into our house, or we don't have a predator chasing us. We have the traffic, the bills, the boss, the kids, the job, the house payments, the car payments, the money, grocery, gas, stress, taxes, all of that, life. Life has created a very high stress, go, go, go all the time lifestyle for us. And so that creates stress, and stress puts us into this fight or flight response. Now, at the workshop Monday night, I'm going to show you a way you can stop this, because we can't make the stress go away. And you go to your doctor and he says, well, you have too much stress, lower your stress level. Well, that's not possible. I mean, we are the way we are. But what we can do, I can show you how to rebuild the stress glands of your body, which is your adrenal system, so that you just don't get the physiological response in your body from that stress. So the stress will be there. You just won't as easily go into this physiologically fight or flight response near as easily as you once did. And it's through rebuilding the adrenal system. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's super simple, very easy to do, and it's very, very effective at blood pressure, digestion, sleep, and weight problems. So if you want to register for the workshop, it's going to be Monday night, April the 30th at 6:30 p.m. I want to encourage all of you out there to come sit down for an hour and learn about ways you can make your life better for your future. Don't wait to have a heart attack. Don't get lulled into this idea that because you're on cholesterol-lowering medicine, you're safe. That does not mean you're safe. I want to show you that there's a better way. So make sure you call and register for your seat, because the workshop's going to fill up. It's 837-7174. That's 837-7174. Just call and leave your name and number on the machine. We'll call you back Monday morning to get you registered. Be by your phone, because the workshop's Monday night. So it's 837-7174, or simply text the word truth to 77453. That's truth, TRUTH, to 77453. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Thank you for joining us. Now, before break, I was talking about that if it's not cholesterol, what is it? When you add the high stress life to a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet loaded with trans fats, it's the perfect recipe for poor heart health, heart attacks, and heart disease. I have such a simple system to turn all this around. But you know what? It really takes someone who's willing to sit down with you and work all of this out. This takes time. This takes time for me to sit down with you and create a program to restore your health very methodically, step by step. And you can't be lazy or in a hurry and figure this out. I promise you, you can't figure this all out in a 3-minute office visit. I spend the time that it takes with each and every patient that comes in the door to try to figure out their individual set of solutions and a program to help them implement a program to put those solutions in place easily and naturally. So guys, here's the deal. Cholesterol is found at the scene of the crime, but it's not the criminal. And we call it this sort of old science. So what would happen is you would go into your doctor and he would check your total cholesterol, your HDL, LDL, triglycerides, and blood sugar. And we now know that there's some additional tests that are critically important. Back in the 60s, you were given one cholesterol number. Mrs. Smith, your cholesterol is 240. I don't know if y'all remember that or not, but you used to just have one number. So they got to looking into this a little further, and they figured out, well, wait a minute, some cholesterol is actually good for us. And so they termed it good and bad cholesterol, HDL and LDL. And some of it has more beneficial effects. And so they divided it into two categories, good and bad, LDL and HDL. And we've been stuck there for 30 years. And you know what? Now this is totally outdated. It oversimplifies it. There's so much better science out there. And this is the best of what I call the old science. It's called your HDL fraction. So what we do is we take your triglycerides, whatever that number is, and divide it by your HDL number. And we want that number to be less than 2. So if you have a triglycerides of 90 or 95 and your HDL is, say, 50, that's 1.9, or that's right at 2, so you're healthy. Now, if your triglycerides are 400 and your HDL is 30 or 35, that's bad heart health. And this person is more than likely not only that, but very inflamed. Because when your triglycerides are 400 and you have low HDL, that's a sign of inflammation. Guys, it all boils down to inflammation. But that's the best of the old science, and we still use that. Now, the other part of the old science is this concept of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is a sign of just tons of inflammation in the body, and it's also a sign of kind of ticking time bomb situation. So we need to be very careful of it. Metabolic syndrome is a patient that, for a woman, her waist is over 35 inches, for a man over about 40, with high triglycerides, low HDL, so his HDL ratio is way more than 2. And like I said, this is something that we need to get on top of right away. We really call it around the office kind of ticking time bomb, because that's what it is. That's just the truth. But this person with metabolic syndrome, their number one problem they have is systemic inflammation. That's the root of all this. So the best of the old science is looking for metabolic syndrome, triglyceride and HDL ratio. But this new science is taking your cholesterol and breaking it into particle types. It's called cholesterol fractionization. So we look at HDL1, HDL2. HDL2 is better and more protective than HDL1 is. And, we want that to be higher. And the higher that is, the better it is for the body. But the two particles that I've been talking about this whole time is we take LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, and we break it into its individual types of particles. And there's two of them that we call BB shot particles. These are your small, dense, sticky particles. The technical name of them is lipoprotein little a and apoprotein B. And these particles are very bad. They thicken your blood and they stick to your arterial walls. But they only do that if the artery wall is inflamed. So this new science is very important. And guys, I didn't want to get too deep into the woods about all these ratios and radio, on the radio where we talk about, all these calculations. And that's really hard to do on the radio. But this is what I want you to take away from what I just said. We use the best of the old science, which is if you have metabolic syndrome, you're in trouble. And you need to do way more than just take medicine to bring your cholesterol down. And again, metabolic syndrome is a large waist, high blood pressure, bad triglycerides, and low good cholesterol. And if you have that, you need to make absolute sure you come to this workshop that I'm going to be doing on Monday night. And so if you want more information on how you can achieve what the actual goal is here, is how do I not end up rushed to the emergency room with a heart attack? If you want to register for the workshop, it's going to be Monday night at 6:30 p.m. at the Hampton Inn in Broussard. We have a brand new conference room there for us. We've moved the facility to Hampton Inn in Broussard. They have a beautiful new conference room. The number is 837-7174 to register. That's 837-7174, or you can simply text the word truth to 77453. That's TRUTH to 77453. And if you can't make Monday night, Dr. Fontenot is going to be hosting the same workshop Tuesday night in New Iberia, and their number is 367-2567. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back with some more amazing tips on how to take care of your heart. Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. This is such an important topic. Taking care of your heart from early on is very important. And guys, listen, I know you've been given mixed messages, and I know it's like, now what? They're changing their story again. But listen, all we can do is go by the most current, best science out there. And I think we've got it figured out this time. And we have science and studies out there to show that eating saturated fat actually lowers inflammation. And so we thought the devil was the cholesterol, and we now know the actual devil is the inflammation. And we have the best way to reduce inflammation, drug-free, surgery-free solutions for getting inflammation out of your body. at Bryant Wellness Institute. It's some remarkable new technology to reduce inflammation. But taking care of your heart from early on is very important. And that's why it's important for you to sit down with someone to figure out what the process needs to be, where you're really at. What is your heart health really doing? And unfortunately, so many Americans are just too busy. They'd rather pop a pill and keep going. But what happens when that doesn't work? This is your heart we're talking about. Please don't put it off. Don't just say, well, I don't need that. My cholesterol's coming down. I'm good. What happens when you end up rushed to the emergency room with chest pain? So you might want to consider taking just a little bit of time to prevent that now, because it's going to take you a lot of time to deal with it if that ever happens. So at my workshop, I'm going to show you simple things you could do at home to improve your heart health. And I'm going to show you that you can eat good, solid, interesting, tasty food, and you don't have to avoid the fatty foods that you've always wanted. You can have butter at a reasonable amount. You can have the avocados and the coconut oil and the nuts and the olive oils and all those healthy fats for you within reason. They're actually good for you. And we'll talk a lot about inflammation, and I can show you study after study and statistic after statistic that inflammation is actually the real underlying thing that we should be working on. Now, we have lots of other diseases as well that are from inflammation. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all of these things drop when you're less inflamed. So we have a system called 5 points to reduce inflammation in the body at our office. And so when we have a patient with metabolic syndrome or heart disease or clogged artery or any of these things, the most important thing we can do is go through these 5 points to reduce inflammation in the body and go through them as quickly as possible. So to recap, some takeaway points from today's show, because after this, we're moving on to a new topic. Number one is cholesterol and heart disease are not the same thing. Not even close. And number two is LDL and HDL, and simply saying good and bad cholesterol is too simplified. We now have better science, and there's many more important numbers in our particle testing that we do that we have to account for in our cholesterol fractionization test that we do that gives us the underlying answers that can better help you on what is actually going to clog your arteries and not. And number three is the deadly combination of heart disease, stress. It's stress, sugar, and trans fats. That's the deadly combination of heart disease: stress, sugar, and trans fats. Those are the three things that we should be working on. And I'm going to show you how to protect your body from the stress response. So even though you do get a little under the fight or flight every now and then, even though you are one of those high stress individuals, I can show you how to get your stress response down in your body so that you can lose some weight and sleep better and digest your food better and have more energy. And number four is that I'm willing to spend the time it takes to figure out your individual best pathway to achieving a long, healthy life. And so it's very important. And if you're not willing to do that for yourself, at least do that for your family. Do that for your kids. Do it for your loved ones, because they want you to take care of yourself. Don't continue to put it off. If you don't care enough about yourself to do it, at least do it for your family. So in closing, I want to invite all of you to come to our workshop called The Truth About High Cholesterol, High Blood Pressure, and Heart Disease. It is going to be fantastic information. It's going to be Monday night at 6:30. And if you want to register, you can call my office at 837-7174. Leave your number on the machine. I'll give you a call back Monday. Just leave your name and number on there. It's 837-7174. Or you can text the word truth to 77453, and your number is going to pop right up on my screen. It's going to be the following night, Tuesday night in New Iberia. Dr. Fontenot's number is 367-2567. Thank you, guys. I look forward to seeing all of you at the workshop. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend.